Welcome to the Volpe Report podcast, the state's premier public affairs show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians. I'm your host, Chuck Volpe. Join us now as we speak to this week's guest.
The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
We welcome back to today's show the Republican Minority Leader of the House of Representatives of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Jesse Topper. He represents the 78th House District, which covers all of Bedford and Fulton counties. Jesse is in his 7th term in the House, and in 2024, he was elected Republican leader by his colleagues. He is also chairman of the very important House Education Committee and is in fact the son of a school teacher. Jesse earned his bachelor's degree from Frostburg University, where he graduated magna cum laude. In his youth, he earned the Eagle Scout rank in the Boy Scouts. He attended and then graduated from Bedford High School, where he was a 3-sport athlete, and he now, in fact, coaches the high school football team at Bedford. He is also an accomplished musician and enjoys playing the piano and organ at local churches during services. Jesse is also an umpire for baseball and a PIAA official in basketball. As we welcome back to the show, we have a budget deadline looming according to the Pennsylvania Constitution. In this show, we'll discuss that June 30th budget deadline and the prospects for meeting it. You'll remember that last year's budget was almost 5 months late, which has had a dire and negative impact on many Pennsylvanians that depend on state funding. We will find out what the chances are of getting that thing done in about a month.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial, the area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Mr. Leader, welcome to the Volpe Report.
Great to be back.
Well, and friend, I should add. You do great public service for this Commonwealth. And as we talked briefly before we started actually recording the show, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. It's got to be a difficult, for want of one vote in the House, it's got to be a difficult passage. As we talked about also kiddingly off the air, it's surprising to me you fully understand what math means because you live with it every day, even one vote out of 203. But a lot of people don't know how important that one vote is and doesn't think it matters. But I'll let you start at speaking to the fact that you are in the minority now.
Yeah, Chuck, look, when I took on this role, I kind of, people asked, why run for leader? We had just been in the minority, for 2 years. I had been the education chair in our caucus, as you know, and was very passionate about that role. But I kind of looked around and I thought, look, we're in the minority, yeah, but it's by one. And we still have a lot of members that were elected so they could impact public policy. And I just didn't believe that sitting around and kind of hanging our heads and saying, woe is us while we're in the minority was a good action. Like, to me, you got to get in. We've been elected to do a job, and we need to keep pushing our message, pushing our agenda. And sure enough, even from the minority, you look at what happened in the last budget cycle, which you could tell the two majority parties in both chambers had a hard time getting something done, and it required us to be involved. And we were able to get major wins, like getting out of the regional greenhouse gas initiative and historic permitting reform, all of that from a one-vote minority. And I think what it showed our members is, if you're persistent, if you do your job well, if you have good ideas, you can be impactful even from the minority. Now, that being said, there's also a lot of days where I go back to my office and I look at some of the stuff that's coming out of the House, and I'm like, thank God, it's not going anywhere in the other chamber, because there's still some stuff that passes that you're wondering, you're shaking your head like, man, if we could get that one more seat, this stuff wouldn't even see the light of day.
There's no doubt. Now, just to put the contrast, just a few short weeks ago, my friend Mike Johnson, the United States Speaker, was on the show, and we had a little different conversation because he was on the plus side. Oh, look, He's dealing out of 435 at the federal level. Only has 3 seats. That's like the equivalent of 1 for a state house. But he's on the plus side of that, and he's able to talk about, no, we're going to get this done, and yes, we're going to get that done, and yeah, we're going to get that done. And I know from some of your predecessors like Brian Cutler and others that it's a lot better. I know you haven't had that pleasure to be on that side of it yet, but I know persistence pays off and hope springs eternal. Another election's coming up, and maybe you'll be on the right side of it this November, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously what we're working towards. I will say, though, I think Mike has the most difficult job in the world. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but also, as you know, very seriously. What he navigates in that world with that many members and that slim a majority, and all that goes on with the national political culture, and of course, the president, who himself is a strong personality. God bless Mike Johnson is all I got to say.
Well, the best, I told the speaker this, actually. I said the best compliment I can give him is the one that Newt Gingrich gave him. I effectively paraphrased. And what Newt Gingrich said about Mike Johnson, and I'll be as close as I can, he said, Mike Johnson is the most consequential speaker since the Civil War, is what Newt Gingrich said, to your point. And he has a few, let's say, high-maintenance members of his own caucus.
Listen, all
you have a few too, by the way, I know.
Right, yeah. I don't worry about the high-maintenance members in the other caucus. I can assure you about that. I'm just worried about
I have no touche. Well, the reason that brings you to this show, Jesse, we are roughly a month away. My math is right, just maybe 1 day and 30 days away from June 30th. The statute, the Constitution requires a balanced budget by June 30th. Last year, to refresh everybody's recollection, not sure anybody really needs much help reflecting, 135 days late. And we were at the end of the year, New Year's was in sight, and we got a deal done, finally got a deal done. And it seemed like within 2 months, a little over 2 months after that, there's the budget address in the beginning of February, and we're right back on a New Year's budget, and we just passed the old one. So I guess what I'm going to start generally with, what do you believe are the prospects for getting this done on time this year?
Well, I'd like to say they're good. I'd like to say it's an election year and we'll be done on time. I'd like to say we went through our battles through November last time, and this time we're in a better situation. But if I'm being intellectually honest with everybody, I see a lot of red flags. I see a lot of the same red flags I saw before, and I don't think it's rocket science. You talk about the math being easy. Well, let's talk about the math. You have a Senate that is in the majority, the Republican Party by 2 seats. You have the House Democrats in the majority by 1 seat, and you have a governor that wants to run for president. And so I think when you put all that together, you have the most divided, difficult to move on either side government that probably we've ever had in Pennsylvania, which is already one of the most closely divided states in the union. And we've seen that not just with election results, but the way that our geography is, the Northeast, the Southwest, the Southeast, Philly, Pittsburgh, Allentown, the T in the middle through State College. We are one of the most diverse states, if not the most diverse state in the union. It shows through our political makeup. And we have 2 completely separate visions of how to operate state government in this Commonwealth. And that is inherently going to bring the type of conflict that we see. The governor continues to propose more spending. The House Democrats actually don't think even that's enough. The Republicans in the Senate are looking at this saying none of it's sustainable. If we didn't raise expenditures a dime, we would still be in deficit spending in a few years. So we've got to come to that ground that is realism. And hopefully that's where our caucus comes in to try and bring some reality to the situation. But so far, I'm not entirely optimistic based on how things are going at the moment.
Well, I concur from a distance, but follow it carefully. And to start talking cases now, you mentioned red flags. I might even call them red herrings, but they're there. And there are some tough issues. You mentioned a governor who wants to run for president. Now, you know, there are people out there saying, oh, that might be a cheap shot politically. No, it's not a cheap shot. It's right on the mark, and here's why. Because he wants to run for president, he has to check boxes in the Democratic constituency, even what I will call the radical fringe, radical progressive, almost socialist Marxist, which is the tail wagging the dog of the Democratic Party to me. Nationally, not locally so much, but at the national and state level, that's clearly the case. You have a radical element, and he cannot win a presidential Democratic primary unless he appeals to some of those people. So you're going to have boxes getting checked. He has to start. Let's start with the teachers union has to be taken care of big time. So that's, I think, $600 million rounding up a hair of this year's budget increase. That's the increase in education spending. He won't talk about school choice, which is overwhelmingly in every poll something parents want to have for their children because he has to be beholden. And there's a number of other things in there that are clearly designed, which are the things kicking us way over the budget. He has outspent every year our revenues by a lot every year. And his stopgap measure before and again, he's going to use up effectively almost the total amount left of the rainy day fund. He's going to plug in about $4 billion of rainy day fund money to help balance this budget this year. So again, with that like background now, talk about some of those issues, some of those red flags, some of those issues, whether there's any grounds for compromise on it.
Look, we'll start with education. First of all, the governor has, I think what really set our budget cycles on a negative course was the very first budget where he did come out in favor of school choice, where he did reach an agreement with the Republican-controlled Senate on a voucher type program, a school choice type program, and was summarily rejected by his own party. And as you said, kind of had to make this pivot on an issue that he had been considered somewhat moderate on in the past. And now we've gone the other way. But to address your point about education spending and the increases, these are just the increases. $562 million increases year over year set forth by the Basic Education Funding Commission, which I had voted against that report. I was on that commission. It's not sustainable and it's not working. Meanwhile, we have over 17,000 kids on a waiting list in Pennsylvania trying to get into career and tech education facilities that can't. That waiting list is because we don't have the facility size, we don't have the equipment. If we're going to put money into education, there are ways we can put it into to get better results. We have to clear that waiting list, Chuck. We're talking about our future workforce. We're talking about public school kids that are asking to get into certain programs, and we're telling them, no, we don't have room or the money to do that, but we're going to keep dumping money into this black hole that is producing zero results across the Commonwealth. And so in my opinion, it's about a reallocation of funds. We have to look at that, and that has to be a part of our conversation in this year's budget. And then the overall, we know where the spending increases are coming from. We have to get a hold of our entitlement programs here in Pennsylvania. We have to have a better run, more efficient government system when we're talking about Medicaid, when we're talking about the entitlement programs for the less fortunate. The fraud that we are finding throughout these systems around America, not just here, is signaling that there is something that we can do to bring that cost down, to make it more efficient, and still have a safety net for those that we need to take care of. So those are some things that if we don't start to, really change direction and pivot in the world of education and in the world of human services or the entitlement programs, that's where our costs are exploding. We have to get a hold of that and still be efficient.
Right. Well, another subject, and I want to return to that a bit, but I want to also quickly mention, speaking of lies in campaigns, when he ran the first time for governor 4 years ago, he said he would not support Reggie and he would support opening up our energy production, and then completely lied and reneged on that and kept us in Reggie. So let's talk a little bit about, he has now a new program, right? I forget the name of it, PACE or something like that, which is a gussied up Reggie his own Reggie, which is going to try to, again, tax our energy production. Could you talk about that quickly, too?
Yeah, and we're not going to go backwards. We made tremendous gains. And look, the other thing we have to mention about budgets is it's not just about cutting your way out of it or taxing your way out of it. The only real way to create sustainable budgets forward is a growing economy. And the number one area that we can have that growing economy in Pennsylvania is in energy, in energy development. I don't have to tell you, Chuck, we're the number 2 exporter of energy in the nation, next to Texas. We have the natural gas under our feet. We have the baseload capacity to do this, and absolutely ending that lawsuit that he continued from the Wolf administration from Reggie was vital. And we're not going to go backwards. I mean, we had to work very, very, very hard and diligently for that victory. We're not going to give that ground up. And I can tell you that Reggie Light, if it as it were, will not get support in anything that we're looking at as the Republican caucus in the House or in the Senate.
Yeah, well said. Now we have to now we've talked about some of that end of it. Now let's go back and kind of go from the other side of it. One of his ways, quote unquote, to plug the deficit hole and create new revenue are, for lack of a better word, flat out sin taxes. That's what they are. Sin taxes that destroy families, destroy people's lives, like that we need gaming boxes in every 7-Eleven, in every Sheetz, in every mini mart in Pennsylvania. They're going to have games of chance. And of course, then there's the additional issue, which is probably one of the bigger drivers to it. I'm trying to think there were 3 components to a sin tax. That was one on that. What was the other one? Maybe you can help me out. There were a couple of sin taxes.
There's, of course, legalization of marijuana.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. How can I forget the drugs? Yeah, legalization. Thank you, Jesse, of marijuana. So before I get into some specifics of how insidious this issue has become, when you add all of that up, legalization of marijuana, you add up the games of chance everywhere so people can become more gambling addicted. And there was one other. But when you add all that up, if my estimates are what I've heard are correct, we have like a 5.3 or 5.6, I said, billion dollar shortfall of expenditures to revenues. He wants to plug it with sin taxes. If he has his wish list and gets all of them approved, that adds up to like 1.7 or 1.8 billion, if those numbers are right, which would leave us almost a $4 billion. If he gets everything he wants with the sin taxes, it doesn't come close. So are those numbers what you've heard correct?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you should never, ever go after legalizing an industry of any kind, good or bad, based on revenue projections. You have to look at what it will do to the Commonwealth overall. So, for instance, we have gaming here in Pennsylvania. We have casinos. We have video game terminals. We have small games of chance. We have the skill games that are being litigated right now. Okay, so we have sports betting in Pennsylvania. So what we need to do is we need to have a healthy gaming market that has proper oversight. And if we create a system where the businesses are making money, are in Pennsylvania and have proper oversight, the health of that industry will take care of itself. Like whatever revenue we get, that's what we get. To try and create public policy to hit a specific number never works. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the legalization of marijuana. Look, we can have a debate on legalization. It's split, whether you talk to people in my communities, your communities, if you talk to folks in my caucus, the Democrats, everybody can have that philosophical debate. But here's what I know for sure. Once we legalize in Pennsylvania, we will tax the bejesus out of it to the point that when Cousin Johnny's growing it in his backyard, that's still where they're going to get their marijuana. It's not. We're going to create an illicit market because we're not going to be able to help ourselves in taxing the commodity to the point where it's outside of the realm of it. So the idea that we're going to have all of this money is an absolute fallacy. And I believe everyone who's promoting it knows it. And I think it really shouldn't even be part of the conversation when it comes to legalization of adult use marijuana.
Agreed. Now let me pivot back just to the gambling aspect. Only because it's hit a little closer to home for me with people I care about, very good public servants. So let's start with Senator Lisa Baker. gets primaried. Apparently, and she did this show about maybe a week or so before her election. Money, dark money, was coming out of Georgia from various gaming. Now, where it came from really and was filtered through Georgia, worked its way into a Pennsylvania Senate primary in her race. She was primaried in her own party by someone who apparently was quoted as saying, well, I wasn't going to run, but someone said, if you run, we'll give you all this money to be pro-gaming. And she won, thankfully, a very strong 10-point victory. So that's another, offshoot, collateral damage of that issue being put on the table, because now you get all those interested. See, it's going to be a field day for gaming in Pennsylvania. I just wanted to let you know. I know you must have heard of other Republicans that got primaried as well on an issue like that. But I guess where the rubber hits the road for me, Jesse, is this. Again, if all that comes true, you're still $4 billion short. And now let us turn, naturally, the segue is your thoughts on the rainy day fund being used to, again, plug in a one-year budget.
Right. Well, look, I think the rainy day fund is there for two reasons. One, it's there if you have, kind of a calamity. We'll go back to the COVID years where all of a sudden you weren't sure where money was going to come from. The economy took a major hit, and you felt like there was going to be a rebound. So you can plug one-time money into a budget, believing that there's going to be a rebound on the other side. And this is what I've said. I'm okay using the rainy day fund for that purpose. But what are you doing to ensure on the other side that the economy is going to rebound? Right. That your revenues are going to be higher? Since last year and the stuff we got in the budget with permitting and Reggie, guess what? Our revenues are up from the year before. In fact, they're higher than we thought that they would be. That's what happens with pro-growth policy. So if you want to plug a deficit with a little bit of the rainy day fund, and then you say, well, in exchange, I need something that's going to show that the economy is going to rebound and we're going to actually have sustainable growth, that's one thing. If you say, well, we're just going to use the rainy day fund because we don't know how else to get out of this budget cycle, then what I'll tell you is in 3 years or 2 years, it's gone. And when it's gone, then what are you going to do? Well, we all know you're going to raise taxes. And so, right. And so it's really about what are we doing from a policy perspective to grow? We know we have a demographics problem. Chuck, in Pennsylvania, we're getting older, we're getting sicker. We don't have enough young people staying in Pennsylvania, starting their families here, getting their jobs here. We're essentially chasing them through some of our policy to Ohio, West Virginia, and further south to the Carolinas and to Florida and Texas. So if we don't get a hold of that, then all this other stuff is just talk, because you can make the numbers say what you want them to say. Eventually you're going to run out of money. So my thought with the rainy day fund is we preserve it until we need it. And when we do need it, we're going to got to show on the other end, what are we doing to grow the economy? And I can guarantee you it's not going to be filled through gaming and marijuana. We have to have industry when it comes to the gaming industry, but it's not going to be filled by those kind of gimmicky taxes. It's only going to be filled by sustainable economic growth.
And one of the underpinnings for that, right, Mr. Leader, is opening up our energy sector, which is still got the friggin' choke chain pulling. Yeah, we got out of Reggie, but it's still not fully open. He's come up with an alternate program, as you said, Reggie Light, which undermines it. And you're right, if we grew our economy, all the other things, they take
care of themselves.
Of course. So you can't have anti-economic growth policies to virtue signal to your base, the Democratic leftist base. Oh, and then we're going to use the rainy day fund to plug our hole. Let me give you a quick little that you would probably remember. Of course, so we all know, our viewers know, the rainy day fund we're talking about came as a direct result of COVID monies. The federal government gave states large chunks of money to deal with the economic devastation of what COVID caused. That was a big part of it. So having said all that, I'm going to take a trip down memory lane to the latter 2000s. The financial collapse, you remember, of 2007 and 2008. Pennsylvania received all kinds of like tens of billions of dollars out of that disaster, like a lot of other states, depending on their size. We had a Democratic governor then, actually a protege of Josh Shapiro named Edward Rendell. And guess what he did with a big chunk of that rainy day money then? He plugged it into a big chunk, $1 billion plus of that went into education. And he said, look, and everybody, the Republicans in the Senate, the Republicans in the House, your predecessor said, wait, that's one-time money. We can't plug our stuff with that. Well, guess what? He did it anyway. And he acknowledged, well, yeah, this is only one time. You know, it'll go away. It'll sunset. Well, you know that never happens. He leaves office. Tom Corbett comes in 2010, Republican governor. So guess what? He says, to balance our budget, as we are required to do, all that money that Governor Rendell said is one-time money is now being kept in the budget, and he put it back in the budget, and we can't afford that anymore. It was one-time money. So he then says all those new programs he put in education, they're no longer funded. He took them out because there was no money to pay for it anymore. The Democrats beat him to a bloody pulp, Jesse, for 4 years. He cut education. He's hurting our children. That's the hypocrisy and deceitfulness of the other side. So I could see a similar scenario. Josh Shapiro, whether he wins or loses, rides off into the sunset. Eventually we get a Republican governor, and all of this one-time rainy day money is going to become permanent, and then they're going to say, you cut all this essential service to the citizens of Pennsylvania. Just going to share with you. You remember all that stuff, I know.
Sure, I remember. I was there. I served under Governor Corbett. I remember what happened in the subsequent election. And when look, I have no inherent problem with Governor Shapiro wanting to run for president. Right. You know, people want to run for president or higher office. They have goals. He thinks he can do a great job for the country. So be it. It's not that he wants to run. It's the fact that, to your point, when you're looking at something else, you're not really looking at what happens after you leave office. And if more of our predecessors, and not just Governor Shapiro, not just in the governor's office, but if more House members and more senators over the years worried about the years that they weren't on the ballot, following them going somewhere else or back into the private sector retirement, we would be in a lot better situation. And it's what I preach to our folks all the time. It's not just about this year. It's not just about next year. It's not just about the next election cycle. It's about future generations in Pennsylvania. And if you're not willing to be a public servant for them and govern with them in mind, then you're in the wrong spot.
There's no doubt. Well, Jesse, believe it or not, we did take a break. We just were, you were rolling and I was rolling. We kind of blew through our time. So I want to thank you for appearing again. I wish you Godspeed in the difficult road ahead as far as getting a balanced budget for Pennsylvania. It's hard to see from where I sit, which is why I'm glad I don't sit where you sit, any way we can bridge this gaping gap that we have between reality and the Democratic wish list. But if anybody can navigate that, it's our Republican leader in the House, you. So at least I take, just like I had the conversation with Joe Pittman, if our fate comes down to you two guys on our behalf, I'll take whatever deal gets cut. So Godspeed in that regard.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Great to be with you, as always.
And I'll talk to you soon, Mr. Leader. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Volpe Report podcast. Be sure to visit our YouTube and Facebook pages for upcoming episodes. You can catch up on the Volpe Report podcast on your favorite podcast provider.